I'm sure it will come as a surprise to nobody that I spend a lot of time on places like Witch Talk and Witchblr and just pretty much anywhere witches hang out across all social media apps and websites and stuff. And you're always, no matter what group you're in, going to have a few people who try to gatekeep or dictate certain aspects of it. But there's usually a pretty decent group in, witch circles and stuff. I have noticed something recently though, and first it kind of showed up on TikTok and then it kind of started moving from app to app, and that is witches, especially newer witches, younger witches who have been in the craft for a few years, but they're still kind of finding their way, and they're frustrated. They're frustrated because they are pagan witches who want to work with deity. Now, deity work can be difficult even at the best of times because you are a human being with a very brief lifespan on this planet who is trying to reach out to an ancient, extremely powerful being in hopes that they will want to work with you. That's already quite a feat. You can ask anyone who works with deities. It takes quite a long time to create that relationship and that trust with the deities that you're working with, and you have to do a lot to prove to them that you're worth their time. And for the most part, the people who are frustrated, I do see that they are trying to make sure that they do everything correctly. They aren't just, using them as a wish granter. They are respecting them. They are giving them offerings. They don't expect them to just help for nothing. And for the most part, everything goes off super, super well. They're happy. They believe that their deity is happy. Everything seems to be going according to plan until you reach a point where these witches suddenly say, I don't know what happened. I don't know what I did wrong, but my deity has just vanished. The deity I've been working with for months or even years sometimes is just gone, and I don't know what I did. They didn't really, tell me anything. I didn't feel anything like I did something wrong. What happened? Did I do something wrong? Did I accidentally offend them with a poor offering or something? Someone please help me. And you'll see a variety of responses in the comments about like, oh, make sure that you were offering that deity this, that, and the other thing. I don't think that's necessarily the problem, though. I think that on the whole, people are taking it too personally when a deity suddenly stops working with them. It can be difficult because we are humans. Like it or not, we're humans. And humans become very attached to whatever it is that they're working with, whether it be an animal, a person, a deity, angels, if you're someone who works with angels, anything like that. It's difficult for us to not form a bond with whoever or whatever it is that we are working with at the time. So I think that what's happening is, as humans, we are attaching human characteristics to deities. Now, deities are similar to humans in the fact that they have emotions. They make mistakes sometimes, or have in the past anyway. They work in a moral gray area where they have vices and they have really good aspects about them. It can kind of lead your mind to almost think of them as being humans who happen to just be a step above you, but that's just not the case. They're not humans, and they never were human, and they're never going to be humans. You can't assign human characteristics to an inhuman object. Now, this is kind of a strange comparison, and I want, any deities out there to know I'm not comparing you to animals, but again, we're human, so I'm going to give you a comparison to something that you might understand. So it's similar to me with when I've been around other rescuers, and they rescue a dog, let's say, and they work really hard with this dog because when it gets to the rescue, it's really aggressive, it's really distrusting of human beings, and they're like, okay, well, we have these set of things that we do with the new rescue dogs to, get them to where we want them to be, to where they're going to be able to be adopted out and have that wonderful life that they deserve. And they work for like 6 months nonstop, every single day for hours at a time with this dog, doing everything that they know to do for it. And at the end of that 6 months, there's been absolutely no progress. The dog is still just as aggressive as the day that it came to the rescue. It's still biting at people. It's still struggling to learn any behavioral stuff. They take it to the vet. The vet tries to give it medication. It still doesn't help. They take it to a behavior specialist. Still doesn't help. And at the end of the day, they say, I don't understand. I worked with this dog. Why can't I get it to behave properly? It's never going to be able to have a home. I'm so frustrated. And what they're forgetting is, as much as we would love for every rescue dog to be able to find its forever home one day, can't just give it these rules and hope that it will do what you want. And even with human beings, you can't necessarily control another person. I mean, unfortunately, you can to a certain extent, but at the end of the day, you, generally speaking, can't force a person to do something that they don't want to do unless you're openly threatening them. Deities are like this, only to a grander extent. They have different rules that they live by. For one thing, they are above us, and they are aware of this fact. They're aware of the fact that they're above us and that they call the shots and everything. And what I want people who have gone through this to understand is, if your deity suddenly stops working with you, it is not a slight against you. They have emotions similar to humans, but they, again, are not human beings. They do not follow the same cultural practices that human beings do. They are there to provide a service and to get a service in return, almost, to make deals in a sense. They are there sometimes for the long haul. You could have a deity who wants to work with you your entire life, and that's amazing. People love it when they have their little, forever relationship with their deity. But that is not all of them. Some of them, depending on their personality and what they're getting out of you and what they can provide for you, will be in your life for a while, but when they feel that their task is completed and their services they were offering to you are over and you don't actually need them anymore, they may just dip out, and they're not necessarily gonna, sit down with you in a dream or something and say, okay, so, it's been great with you, Alice, but I think that you don't need me anymore, so I'm just gonna dip out. Because again, they're not humans. They don't think that it's necessarily rude to just take off when, they feel that you don't need them anymore. They're done, They may also just be bored. There's a variety of reasons that a deity may suddenly stop working with you. Now, yeah, you could have done something wrong. You could have accidentally slighted them. And again, depending on the deity, you may be able to make amends, apologize, offer them something grand in return, and have them come back to you. But you might not. You might just be done with them, and they may have severed ties forever because it insulted them to that degree. It's tough to say, honestly. And generally, with the exception of a few, it's doubtful that was just a poor offering that chased them off. But my opinion is, if the deity you've been working with suddenly disappears, just sit down and reflect before you jump into any, state of emotion or anything. Just sit down and reflect. Think about what you've offered them. Have you been upholding your end of the deals you've made with them? Have you been upholding the promises you made to them in return for whatever it was that you asked from them? Have you been putting in enough of the work yourself, or have you been kind of putting it all on their shoulders? If you do a lot of inner reflection and you can honestly say beyond any reasonable doubt that you did everything that you could have to keep that deity around, then it was just time. It was just time for them to move on, and they will always know better than you why they had to dip out. They, like I said, may think that you don't honestly need them anymore, and in that case it could be a good thing, or they could just not feel like working with you anymore. And it's hard because, again, we're humans and we get attached to things, and we get attached to them almost like they're our friends or our family, but we need to always remember that it might not be what they were feeling. It's very tricky when you're working with deities and other ethereal beings to not accidentally apply your own imagination to it. Sometimes you are honestly, hearing them, seeing them, knowing with your third eye what it is that they're expecting from you, but it's very easy to accidentally have it overlap into your imagination and what you want to happen. So that's one of those things where they always tell you, make sure that before you start working with deities, you're really ready for it. Make sure that you understand what you're getting into, because outside of the fact that it can be dangerous, depending on what kind of work you're doing, it can just be emotionally difficult to go through something like this. And if you don't think that you're mentally prepared for that, it might not be time for you to be working with deities. You need to make sure that you have a really strong grasp on what is your communication with that deity and what is your imagination, what you are just fantasizing will happen because it's just what you desperately want to happen. And none of what I've said in this video has been meant as a slight against anyone. It's not been meant at all to be insulting. I've been there too. A lot of people who work with deities have been there before, where you either are accidentally, mixing fantasy with reality and expecting something that your deities that you're working with can't grant to you. And I've been on the road of, well, I was working with this deity for a long time, where did they go? And you just need to remember that, you've just gotta let it go. It's hard, but just let it go. Allow yourself to grieve a little bit if you need to, because if you were working with them, especially for a long time, then obviously they did mean something strong to you, and it's okay to have a grieving period. But the important thing is, in your grief, one, don't let it completely impact your craft. Don't let it completely impact, negatively impact how you feel about your craft, how you feel about your pagan journey. Make sure that you know that you are, just as worthy without a deity in your life, and you will find your footing and probably will find another deity to work with in the future. Also, make sure that if a deity has suddenly stopped working with you, that you're not begging it to come back, and that you're not bothering it and trying to force it to come back into your life just because you miss their presence, because they're not generally going to appreciate that. It's really hard to discuss this stuff without potentially hurting anyone's feelings, and I really hope that I haven't hurt anyone's feelings in this video. I'm just trying to explain based on my experience and the experience of other people that I know of who have worked with deities in the past or are working with them now, that we understand that it can be hard, but that, it's not necessarily your fault or something that you did to that deity to chase them away. Sometimes it's just that their time with you is up. So just try not to take it too personally, and continue having fun with what you're doing and making your life better and more fulfilling through it. And that's about all I have to say on the matter tonight. I hope this helped at least one person out there who's been struggling with this. And as always, do something that makes you happy today, no matter what anyone else thinks about it. And I will see all of you again soon.